Alien cadets mocked the safety rules. Then the Deathworld Girl showed them why she ignored them. The floor kicked once beneath Saren Olt's boots, then hummed the wrong way. A clear wall panel rattled. Across the pressure bay, a human girl stared at the floor while every warning light above her stayed green. Saren was the junior assessor running her Class 9 intake that morning. The human was Nessa Calder, Keystone's Deathworld exchange cadet, and a failed response cycle would bar her from emergency work. Cadet Calder, Chief Evaluator Brontes called, "Inside the line." Nessa looked at the safe zone marker around the other cadets. Then she looked at a bead of water sliding along the lower wall. The system showed airflow moving right. The water moved left. Saren checked his slate again. Green. Nessa took one step away from the marked zone. A warning flashed across Saren's screen. Major procedural deviation. Tess came down from the control rail. Final instruction: enter the safe zone. Nessa did not run. She did not touch a control. She did not move closer to any door. She simply stayed where she was. The other cadets stared at her. Saren's thumb hovered over the violation field. Then a second tone sounded inside the wall. Not part of the drill. Saren looked up. The safe zone lights flickered. Once, then held green. That was where the moment seemed to stop. If a green signal has ever felt safer than a question, remember this one. Saren would spend the rest of the day learning what that signal had missed. A short while earlier, he had thought Nessa Calder's strangest habit was her notebook. Glassline Safety Hall had no use for paper. Response maps filled the walls, and wrist slates carried every emergency sequence. Nessa still wrote by hand. Alien cadets noticed before Saren did. One leaned toward another as Nessa copied a rule: Deathworld improvisation. Nessa heard it. She turned one page and kept writing. Saren stepped to her station. The thin sensory fins behind his jaw were relaxed then. Cadet Calder, why are you adding notes to a verified sequence? I'm not changing it. What are you writing? She angled the notebook toward him. Beside a Dorseal rule she had written, protect pressure split. Beside an evacuation order, keep people away from damaged flow. Beside a helmet rule, bad air. Saren frowned. Those are not the rule texts. No. Then why write them? Nessa capped her pen. What is each rule protecting? A cadet nearby gave a short snort. The question sounded too simple for Keystone. That was why Saren could not answer it as quickly as he wanted. Before he tried, Tesk's voice crossed the hall. Because cadets are not asked to redesign doctrine during an emergency. Chief Evaluator Tesk walked down the center aisle with his wrist slate resting against one palm. He was Soldrin, like Saren, but older, broader, and very good at making a room quiet. The room went quiet. Tesk stopped in front of Nessa. You have been given tested procedures, he said. Your job is to know them. Nessa nodded. I do. Then stopped turning them into questions. I'm trying to remember why they work. That is not required. Nessa considered that. That seems useful. Someone at the back laughed before catching himself. Tesk did not look away from her. Saren had seen him fail cadets for panic, sloppy timing, and hesitation. Those faults could be measured. Nessa's problem was stranger. She obeyed. She just wanted the rule to make sense. Tesk tapped a regulation number on his slate instead of answering her question. Saren knew that habit. He had copied it. At Keystone, the closed sequence standard began with a clean belief. Once an emergency was classified, cadets followed the assigned response chain without improvising. The school had completed 1,406 certified emergency exercises without losing control of a training chamber. Success had become certainty. Tess carried that certainty like part of his uniform. The system contains the danger, he told Nessa. Personal judgment only adds risk once classification is complete. Saren knew the flaw in that sentence only later. At the time, it sounded like doctrine. Nessa looked down at her notebook. What happens when the system is wrong? Tesk's expression barely changed. It is verified so that you never need to make that decision. Nessa nodded once. No challenge, no speech. She wrote a tiny question mark beside the rule. The intake moved on. Cadets crossed the first chamber in pairs. They checked seals, read warning bands, and repeated response lines to Saren. Nessa did the same. She skipped nothing. She tested no locked panel. She touched no control without permission. That should have ended the joke about Deathworld recklessness. Instead, it made the others watch her more closely. A reckless human would have fit the story they already believed. An obedient human who kept checking the building did not. Nessa checked exits when she entered a room. She watched vents when they changed pitch. Once, while Saren explained a route display, she glanced at the floor and shifted her weight as if feeling for vibration. He marked it as distraction. Then he erased the mark. By the time the group reached the pressure response bay, Saren's fins had started to fold tighter. The next part of the intake was meant to be dull. That was the point. A mild pressure change, a door lock, a safe zone shift. Cadets followed the chain while alarms competed for attention. Tesk remained on the raised control rail. Saren took his place by the chamber console. Nessa stood with the other cadets. Before Saren began, she bent to retie one bootlace. Tesk watched her as if even that might become an argument. Nessa finished the knot, stood, and asked, "Same rule here?" "What rule?" Saren said. "Marked zone means clean air and stable pressure." "Yes." She looked at the floor line. "Okay." It was such a plain answer that Saren almost felt foolish for expecting trouble. He started the cycle. A tone sounded. Panels on the far wall changed color. The wrist slates updated. "Response sequence active," Saren said. "Follow assigned positions." The cadets moved. Nessa moved with them. A vent opened somewhere behind the wall. Air brushed Saren's cheek. The safe area brightened under the cadets' boots. Then Nessa stopped. Saren felt the moment catch up with itself. She was standing exactly where he remembered from the opening of the cycle, just short of the glowing line. Cadet called her. She crouched. Several cadets turned. Nessa put 2 fingers near the floor seam without touching it. Then she looked at the clear wall beside the vent. Condensation had formed there. The droplets slid left. Saren's display showed flow to the right. His fins pressed flat. Nessa stood. "The display says this side is clean," she said. "It is," Saren replied. "The water is moving the other way." Tess came down from the rail. Cadet called her, "Enter the safe zone." Nessa looked at Saren. "Is the vent pull supposed to match the display?" Saren opened his mouth. Tesk answered first. "The chamber is under verified control." Nessa stayed where she was. Not deeper into danger. Not closer to the door. Just outside the green line. One cadet whispered, "She's failing on purpose." Saren looked from the slate to the condensation. He did not think she was. That worried him more. Tesk stopped beside Nessa. He raised his wrist slate so the rule sat between them. Keystone does not train cadets to improvise around feelings. Nessa pointed at the wall with one finger. "That's water." A few cadets looked down to hide smiles. Tesk's jaw tightened. "The system is verified." Nessa's voice stayed level. "I'm not saying the rule is bad." "Then obey it." I'm saying the room is not doing what the rule expects. For the first time, Saren checked the raw auxiliary display instead of the main training summary. The data page took a moment to load. Tesk noticed. Assessor Olt. Saren looked up. Stay on the certified view. Yes, Chief Evaluator. He closed the raw page. He hated how quickly he did it. Tesk faced Nessa again. What you call judgment is exactly what emergency doctrine removes. Fear makes people invent exceptions. Nessa glanced at the green line. I am scared. That silenced the cadets more completely than Tesk had. Nessa added, that's why I'm checking. Saren's fins tightened until they almost hurt. Tesk reached into a narrow case at his belt. He removed a palm-sized red ceramic tile. The room changed at the sight of it. Every Keystone cadet knew the tile. It marked a major procedural failure. Most trainees went a full term hoping never to hold one. Tesk offered it to Nessa. Safety stops being safety the moment a cadet decides she knows better. Nessa took the tile. It looked bright against her hand. She turned it once, slipped it into her pocket and asked, do I return this later or is it mine now? A laugh escaped from the back of the group. Tesk stared until it died. Saren almost smiled. Almost. Tesk turned to him. Record the violation. Saren raised his slate. The failure field waited for his thumb. He looked at Nessa. She had not moved. He looked at the green zone. Every other cadet stood inside it. Then the wall made a sharp clicking sound. The safe zone lights flickered again. This time they went out. A systems alert cut through the chamber. Every wrist slate refreshed. The green marker vanished. A red barrier line replaced it. The cadets inside looked down at their feet. Saren's screen filled with a message from an auxiliary sensor. Environmental data conflict. Automatic isolation pending. Tesk spun toward the control rail. Abort the cycle. Saren hit the command. For one long beat, nothing happened. Then a clear pressure wall dropped around the zone Nessa had refused to enter. The cadets inside were not hurt. The chamber shifted them into a secondary safe state, exactly as its backup design allowed. But nobody laughed. The red failure tile was still in Nessa's pocket. The violation field was still open on Saren's slate. And the place she had been ordered to stand was the place the chamber itself had just rejected. Saren stared at the report box. His thumb did not move. Behind his jaw, his fins pressed flat. Across from him, Nessa watched the last bead of condensation slide left. Saren closed the violation field without signing it. Tesk noticed. Problem. The auxiliary sensor contradicted the main display. The backup system did its job. That is not what I meant. Tesk's eyes shifted to him. The main display marked the zone safe, Saren said. Cadet Calder moved before the auxiliary alarm. She moved without authorization. Yes. That is the violation. Saren looked toward Nessa. She was helping another cadet collect a dropped slate. No grin, no victory look. He saved the report as unfinished. Later, alone at a review console, Saren pulled the chamber data apart. He expected luck. Instead, he found sequence. Nessa had watched the condensation, then the vent, then the floor seam. Only after those signs disagreed with the display had she stepped away. The chamber model had not failed. It had lagged. The main system was reading the correct rule from the wrong picture of the room. A message appeared on his slate. Report status incomplete. Then another arrived. Chief Evaluator requests review. Tesk was waiting in Glassland Safety Hall. The hall was empty except for a cleaning unit moving along the far wall. Tesk stood beside Nessa's desk with her notebook open. Saren stopped. Tesk tapped one page. She is not memorizing doctrine. She passed the verbal checks. She is translating doctrine into private judgment. Saren chose his words carefully. She may be translating it into purpose. Tesk looked up. That was the first time Saren had openly pushed back. Tesk closed the notebook. The human moved before the system instructed her to move. The room supported her choice. The room later changed state. No, the state was already changing. The main display was late. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Tesk smiled. Good. Saren's fins lifted a fraction. Good. If there is uncertainty, we remove it. We run her again. The next morning, Nessa arrived early at Lockstep Containment Wing. She held up the red tile between two fingers. Still mine? I believe so. Useful souvenir. It is a disciplinary marker. That too. She put it away. Saren checked her new assignment. Tesk had stripped nearly every choice point from the evaluation. Routes were fixed. Door timing was fixed. Manual confirmation requests were gone unless the system asked for one. This is stricter than standard intake, Saren said. Nessa looked over his shoulder. Did I win something? No. Shame. Tesk entered. Today's exercise removes ambiguity. You will follow the assigned sequence exactly. Nessa nodded. If the room matches it. The room will match it. The first stages gave Tesk exactly what he wanted. A seal warning appeared. Nessa checked the code, moved to the correct wall point, and waited. A pressure tone sounded. She fitted her mask before the instruction finished displaying. The next door opened. She waited for the edge light, crossed, and sealed it behind her. Perfect sequence. By the time she reached the next chamber, the alien cadets in the gallery had stopped whispering. One finally said, "She knows all of it." Another answered, "Then why does she keep checking?" Saren wondered the same thing. A low pulse ran through the floor. Nessa stopped with one boot raised over the threshold. Her slate showed advance. Tesk spoke through the wall speaker. Continue. She lowered her foot. Saren checked the display. Normal. Then he saw the vibration trace. A repeating spike ran under the line every time the door mechanism cycled. Nessa pointed toward the lower frame. Is that supposed to shake? Tesk said, continue. She stayed put. Saren opened the detailed trace. The vibration was strongest at the threshold. Chief Evaluator. I see it. The root crosses the strongest point. It remains within tolerance. Nessa looked up at the speaker. What is the rule protecting here? Movement discipline. That's not what I asked. The gallery went silent. Tesk's voice sharpened. Cadet Calder crossed the threshold. Nessa looked at the floor. Then she stepped backward. A violation warning appeared on Saren's slate. Tesk marked it himself. Failed response. Nessa read the words. Fast grading. The door frame gave a hard metallic knock. The exercise paused itself. A maintenance alert appeared. Saren opened it. Hinge load was above the trial model's prediction. Not by much. Enough. Nessa had refused before the maintenance system had. Again. Tesk canceled the chamber and ordered the next stage prepared. Saren stared at him. Shouldn't we inspect the model first? It contained the fault. It did not predict it. It detected it. After she did, Tesk turned toward him. We are not training cadets to compete with sensors. Saren looked through the glass. Nessa was inspecting the threshold from a safe distance. She isn't competing with them. What would you call it? Checking whether they agree with the room. Tesk said nothing. The next trial moved into an advanced containment corridor. Specialist cadets were already there, wearing academy gray and moving with the exact rhythm Saren had admired since joining Keystone. Nessa joined the rear of their group. A wall map lit. The corridor ahead showed clear. The specialists moved. Nessa followed. For a while, nothing went wrong. Then a narrow service panel began to tremble. Nessa slowed. The cadet ahead of her glanced back. Move. Does that panel always shake? Keep formation. The group continued. Nessa followed for a few steps. Then the vibration changed. Slower. Heavier. Saren heard it through the chamber microphones. The specialists did not stop. Their slates still told them to advance. Nessa did. Tesk leaned toward his controls. Order her forward. Saren opened the infrastructure display instead. The active map showed a solid support line beneath the corridor. The live vibration sensor showed stress crossing that same path. Saren zoomed in. A maintenance stamp sat on the digital model. Old enough to raise a question. He opened the current service record. Access restricted. Saren looked at Tesk. Why is the lower service record restricted? It is not part of the exercise. The vibration is coming from that level. The route is certified. Nessa's voice came through the chamber. Saren. It was the first time she had used his name during a trial. She watched the specialists disappear around the bend. If the map is right, the vibration shouldn't be strongest under the root. Saren checked again. She was right. Tesk said, the corridor remains green. Nessa answered, the corridor doesn't know that. A specialist's voice cut across the comm. Control, we have movement. Saren straightened. What kind? Floor shift small. Another voice broke in. Door marker changed. The route on Saren's display stayed green. The specialist feed said otherwise. His fins locked flat. He opened the raw building sensors. Pressure stable. Air stable. Door state stable. Structure uncertain. Tesk read the last line. A specialist at the front tested the next door once and pulled his hand back when the frame kicked under his palm. Control. His voice had lost its training room calm. Saren heard breathing over the open channel. Not panic yet, close enough that his own fins pressed harder against his neck. Nessa was the only cadet not looking at a slate. She was looking at the walls. Tesk said, the system is still resolving. The specialists had stopped now. Nessa remained behind them at the last junction. Tesk keyed the comm. All cadets hold position and await sequence update. Nessa looked toward the trembling panel. Can I check the local marker? No. Can Saren? Tesk hesitated. Saren opened it himself. The station model showed the service gallery below the corridor as sealed and unused. He tried an older engineering archive. A rough floor plan appeared. The support path did not match the active model. Saren felt his mouth go dry. Tesk. The chief evaluator leaned closer. The live map says the support line runs here, Saren said. Yes. The older plan puts it one section over. Then the older plan is obsolete. Maybe. Not maybe. Saren pointed at the vibration trace. It is shaking where the old plan says the weak span is. Tesk's hand closed around the edge of the console. For the first time, his certainty looked like effort. He keyed the specialist channel. Continue holding. Central model remains primary. Nessa's voice came quietly after his. What changed down there? Tesk did not answer. Saren did. I don't know yet. Then don't send anyone farther. Tesk turned on him. She does not give you orders. No. Saren kept his eyes on the data. But she is asking the right question. No one in the gallery moved. Tesk stepped back. End the exercise. Relief hit Saren so fast it almost hurt. He entered the cancellation command. The system accepted it. The trial lights changed from white to blue. The specialist cadets began turning back. Nessa stayed where she was. Then the corridor doors slammed shut. All along the section, the blue trial lights vanished. A real alarm started. Saren looked at the console. Cancelled remained on the exercise panel. Below it, a new line appeared from station control. Containment event live. For half a second, nobody spoke. Then Nessa looked straight into the nearest camera. That one wasn't yours, was it? Every door on Saren's board turned red at once. He hit the station channel. Control, confirm live containment. Static answered first. Then a voice said, confirmed. Lockstep wing has dropped into emergency isolation. The specialist cadets inside the corridor began talking over one another. Control, our return door is sealed. Map still shows exit green. Saren looked at that last line. The map was lying again. Tesk moved beside him, switched to central emergency sequence. Saren did. Wait for classification. Verify local SEALS. Hold personnel in place. Nessa's voice came through the chamber speaker. Saren, can you see the floor below us? Part of it. Does the old plan connect this corridor to a service level? He opened the rough engineering map. A narrow maintenance gallery ran beneath the sealed section. Yes. Is it real? Saren stared at the screen. I don't know. Then don't use it yet. Tesk turned toward the speaker. That is enough. All cadets remain where they are until Central Control assigns a route. Nessa answered fine. No argument. No move toward the forbidden hatch. She sat on the low wall beside the sealed junction and waited. One specialist stared at her. You were just telling us the map is wrong. I was. And now you want to wait. I want to know where the other door goes. Saren's fins eased slightly. That was the part Tesk kept missing. Nessa did not hate rules. She hated guessing. Saren sent an emergency override for the lower service archive. A partial maintenance sketch opened. The gallery did connect beyond the locked corridor. It also crossed beneath another occupied training room. He keyed Nessa's channel. You were right to wait. Unknown route. Yes. That's a bad route. A hard thump sounded through the specialist channel. The corridor camera shook. The unstable trace had spread past the first threshold. Tesk said, Central Control will assign movement. How long? They are processing the event. A second group was already being held behind another automatic seal. Then an occupancy warning appeared. The system had counted trainees from the canceled drill as if they had cleared the wing. They had not. Nessa came back over comms. You just made that face again. What face? Your fins disappear when the news is bad. Saren touched the side of his neck before he could stop himself. Nessa said, how bad? He checked the occupancy list manually. 28 cadets are isolated across the sealed section. Silence followed. One of them was Vara Sen, the youngest specialist in the group. Saren had scored her first SEAL drill weeks earlier. Her voice came through now. Assessor Olt. I'm here. The door behind us is warm. Saren opened its sensor page. No heat warning. Nessa watched Vara from farther down the corridor. Don't lean on it. I wasn't going to. Good. Tess cut in. No cadet is to issue instructions outside the assigned chain. Nessa looked toward the camera. She noticed something before your sensor did. Tesk's reply came fast. Central classification remains in progress. Saren checked the lower gallery again. The archive sketch ended at a manual service junction. The active model showed a solid wall there. 2 maps. 2 different buildings. He sent the conflict to Central Control. Received. No route. The corridor shook again. A light strip broke loose at one end and hung from its cable. The specialists stopped looking at their slates. They were looking at Nessa. Tesk saw it. Cadets maintain doctrine. Nessa stood. Chief Evaluator, what is the rule protecting right now? Order. That's not a safety outcome. It prevents uncoordinated movement. Good, I agree with that. So nobody moves until we know the service route is safe. Saren looked at Tesk. His own rule had just been narrowed to its purpose. Saren opened every live feed he could reach. A local warning appeared from the second sealed room. Life support estimate, 97 seconds. Saren felt his throat tighten. Tesk read it. Central Control is aware. Nessa's face changed for the first time. Not panic. Focus. Does the service gallery reach them? The old plan says yes. The active model says it ends before that wall. Nessa took one step toward the hatch. Then stopped herself. Can opening this pull bad air toward them? Saren checked. I don't know. Find out. Tesk said Cadet called her stand down. She did. Again. She backed away from the hatch while Saren searched the pressure network. That obedience hit him harder than defiance would have. If she were reckless, this would be simple. She was making him prove every step. Saren dug into the local controller logs. The gallery was still connected. Its main seal was manual, and the pressure zones on either side were separate. Opening the first hatch would not vent the trapped room. He checked the live values again. Nessa, the first service hatch is safe. Beyond it, I can confirm it reaches a local control point. I cannot confirm the floor past that. Good enough for the first door. Tesk stepped between Saren and the main console. No. Saren stared at him. The life support estimate is active. Central Control has not approved manual access. The system thinks part of that gallery does not exist. That does not give us permission to invent a route. Nessa spoke through the channel. We're not inventing it, he found it. Tesk ignored her. Saren locked manual access. Saren looked at Vara's camera. She had moved away from the warm door. Fog had begun to cloud the inside of her mask. The years he had spent learning Keystone Doctrine collapsed into that one small image. He opened the manual permission field. My authorization. You do not have authority to override a live central response. I have local emergency authority when the assigned model is contradicted by direct hazard data. That clause is for sensor failure. Saren looked at him. We have sensor failure. Tesk reached for the console. Saren submitted the authorization first. A light beside Nessa's hatch changed. She did not open it. Nessa, Saren said. Last check. Opening this won't shift the hazard toward the other room. No. Then I'm going. She pulled the release. The panel opened inward. No alarm followed. Nessa crouched at the threshold and checked the floor and side rail before moving to the first support frame. Saren tracked her from the local feed. The gallery sensors woke one by one as she passed. That was when he understood the mismatch. The sensors were there. The active map simply had no current path assigned to them. Nessa reached the first junction. A manual control box sat on the wall. "Local circulation bypass," she said. Saren opened the old diagram. "Yes." Tesk said, "Do not touch it." Nessa kept her hands off. "What does it feed?" "The isolated training section." "What does it pull from?" Saren traced the other branch. "A clean reserve loop." "This could restore circulation without opening the bad corridor," he said. Tesk leaned over the console. "Could." Saren checked the valve states. One branch was closed. The reserve side was available. The system had never called it because the current facility model did not include the junction. Nessa waited with both hands away from the control. Saren grabbed a cup from the dispenser because his mouth had gone dry. He filled it, forgot to drink, and set it beside the unfinished violation report still open on his screen. The red failure field blinked beside Nessa's name. Tesk looked almost relieved. This is exactly why procedure exists. She has reached an unverified manual control during a live emergency. She stops now. Saren looked at the old diagram. Then the live pressure feed. Then the local sensor Nessa had awakened by reaching the junction. All three agreed. "Nessa." She looked into the service camera. "Turn the bypass to local reserve only, nothing else." Tesk's head snapped toward him. "Saren," Nessa asked, "confirm nobody else shares the reserve loop." "Confirmed." "Confirm return flow is open." "Confirmed." "Okay." She turned one control. Not the emergency master. One control. Airflow rose in the sealed training section. Vara's circulation indicator steadied. The fog inside her mask began to clear. A cheer started among the trapped cadets. Nessa raised one hand. "Not done." Saren stared at the live map. The official evacuation corridor remained green. Then its structural sensor finally updated. Green became red. Automatic barriers dropped across the route. Had the cadets followed the assigned sequence, they would have been moving toward that section when it sealed. Tesk went still. Saren heard himself say, "The corridor disagreed." Nessa looked toward the camera. "Usually does eventually." No triumph. She checked the local pressure again. "Is everyone getting air?" "Yes." "Then what still needs opening?" The question pulled Saren back. They were safer. They were still trapped. And Nessa stood inside a service gallery the active system officially claimed did not continue beyond the next wall. Saren opened the station history behind the mismatched map. A maintenance record appeared. Then a locked approval entry. Someone had certified the current emergency model after the service route had changed. His VINs pressed flat. Tesk saw the record. "What is that?" Saren tried to open it. "Access limited, BY Directorate Authority." Nessa heard the alert tone. "New problem." "Yes." "How bad?" "I don't know yet." Tesk reached toward the console. "Leave that record closed. We deal with the live incident first." Saren marked it for emergency review. The station sent a new notice. Manual deviation detected. Formal response audit initiated. Nessa read it on her slate. "Am I collecting another tile?" Nobody in control laughed. Tesk stared at the bypass data, then at the corridor his doctrine would have used. For the first time, he had no regulation number ready. Saren looked at the locked approval record. The emergency had proved Nessa right. Now he needed to know why the system had been wrong. The bypass alarm changed pitch. Nessa froze with one hand away from the local control. Saren. He checked the reserve loop, stable. The trap section had air again, but every door around it still showed sealed. Circulation is holding, he said. Do not change anything. Wasn't planning to. Tesk stood beside the main console, staring at the route that had just turned red. Saren opened the service cameras. The old gallery continued past Nessa's position and reached the sealed training section from a side the active map did not recognize. This time he ignored the map and checked the local sensors. Nessa, I can confirm the next junction. Pressure. Stable. Floor. Stable. Other side occupied. No. She moved. Not fast. The life support warning had put urgency into every voice on the channel. Nessa still checked each local marker before crossing it. Varasin came over the comm. Assessor, the door is cooling. Saren watched her through the chamber camera. The fog inside her mask was gone. Stay back from it anyway. Nessa reached the side junction. A manual release sat beneath a protective cover. Tesk finally spoke. Central control is reconnecting. Wait. Nessa stepped back. A station control link opened. The main emergency board refreshed, and the old green route vanished. A new diagram began building from live local sensors. For the first time since the failure began, the screen and the corridor agreed. Saren checked the junction. Local release is recognized. Tesk read the same line. Nessa, open it. She used the release. The side door unlocked. Vara appeared first on the other camera, guiding the nearest cadets away from the failed corridor and toward the newly recognized route. Nessa stood aside and let them pass. One specialist stopped beside her. You knew. Nessa shook her head. I checked. Then she looked back toward the panel. Who is still sealed? Saren pulled up the occupancy list. The isolated groups were moving now. The last room cleared its warning state. He watched until every name moved out of red. All accounted for. Nessa took her hand off the manual panel. Tesk said, stay there until Central finishes rebuilding the map. Is the system reading it correctly now? She asked. Yes, Saren said. Then you don't need me touching it. She stepped away. That was when Tesk finally looked at her differently. The instant the procedure worked again, she stopped breaking anything. Station crews reached the wing and took control. Vara paused at the control room door before medical staff waved her onward. She looked through the glass at Nessa and touched 2 fingers to the front of her slate, where the dead green root had been. Nessa gave the smallest nod. A station tech handed Saren a paper cup of water. He drank half, set it beside the console, and watched the last medical team clear the door. Then he returned to the locked approval record. Emergency access had changed its status. Open for incident review. He selected it. The physical service reroute had been entered correctly after maintenance. The local sensors were current. The emergency response model had not been rebuilt from that record. An automatic compatibility check had marked the old evacuation map as acceptable. At the bottom sat the final doctrine approval. Braun Tesk. Tesk read the page without speaking. I approve the verification package, he said at last. Saren opened the attached note. Because the system reported no conflict. Yes. And nobody compared the route against the changed structure. The standard did not require it after automated verification. Nessa leaned against the wall outside the work area, hands in her pockets. The red failure tile showed above one pocket edge. Tesk looked at it. His doctrine had removed the need for individual judgment. It had also removed the question that would have found the bad map. Sarin sent the record to the emergency board. Then he opened the report he had left unfinished since Nessa's first trial. Major procedural deviation. The field was still waiting. He deleted the classification, not the event. He changed the heading to Evidence Conflict, Response Review Required, and attached the chamber data. Tesk watched him. "You are changing an official evaluation." "I'm finishing it." The review began before the wing reopened for training. Keystone's emergency board met in Glassline Safety Hall, where the cadets had laughed at Nessa's notebook. This time, the notebook sat closed in front of her. The red tile rested beside it. Sarin stood at the evidence display. No one asked whether Nessa had violated procedure. She had. The question was what those violations had protected. Sarin brought up the comparison. She did not guess, she did not rush, she did not take more control than she needed. The board chair looked past Nessa's case. How many other emergency models passed the same automatic check? No one answered. Sarin went through the incidents in order. At the marked safe zone, she moved only after physical evidence disagreed with the display. At the unstable threshold, she refused to cross and moved no deeper. At the service hatch, she waited until the route and its effect on other cadets were checked. At the local bypass, she touched only what was needed to restore circulation. Once the station map matched the physical wing again, she stopped intervening. The chair paused on a still image of Vara Sen, her mask clear now. If Calder had followed the assigned route, where would Cadet Sen have been sent? Tesk looked at the red corridor on the evidence screen. Toward the section that sealed. A board member looked toward Tesk. Was there any point when Cadet Calder ignored a valid hazard restriction? Tesk did not answer at once. Nessa opened her notebook and slid it across the table. Protect pressure split. Keep people away from damaged flow. Bad air. Tesk read the notes. The board chair turned to Nessa. Why keep asking what the rules protected? Nessa shrugged. So I'd know when they stopped doing it. The chair looked at Sarin. Your conclusion. 3 lines appeared beneath the incident record. Valid rule OBYD. False assumption challenged. Protective purpose restored. Tesk closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he looked at Nessa. I called your judgment the hazard. Nessa waited. I was wrong. That was all. No punishment speech followed. The board moved to the harder question. What did Keystone do with a doctrine that had worked for years, then failed because everyone trusted its assumptions? Sarin's report gave the answer. Keep the sequences. Keep the automation. Keep the discipline. Add the question. Before a critical instruction could be treated as absolute, cadets would identify the protective purpose behind it and flag direct physical evidence that contradicted the system. The board chair entered the change for directorate review. A second notice appeared. All active emergency models would be checked against current physical infrastructure before training resumed. The bad route had belonged to one wing. The habit that let it survive did not. Tesk read the directive. He did not argue. The board returned to Nessa's evaluation. One member pointed to the red tile. What happens to that? Tesk looked at it. That classification no longer fits. Nessa picked it up. Do I finally give it back? No, Sarin said. She raised an eyebrow. The chair was reading his proposed training note. This incident requires a reference case. Nessa looked at Sarin. You're putting my failure in the curriculum. Something like that. That sounds like paperwork. It is mostly paperwork. Cruel. A few people smiled. Then the final evaluation entered the record. Nessa Calder remained cleared for emergency response training. Her deviations were reclassified as restrained protective judgment under conflicting system data. The original failure finding was removed. Test's closed sequence standard remained in use, but a new required check sat beside it. Purpose check. The room stayed quiet. The cadets in the back row had spent the first morning laughing because Nessa kept asking what rules were for. Now several had notebooks open. Saren saw the specialist who had told her to keep formation write the same question beside his sequence. What is this protecting? After the meeting, Saren found Nessa outside Glassline Hall. She sat on a low bench, tightening the same boot lace she had retied before the pressure drill. You have a habit of doing that before something goes wrong, he said. She looked at the lace. Cheap boots. He handed her the final evaluation. She read the new classification. Restrained protective judgment. That is what the board chose. Long name. Saren looked at her. Were you afraid in the service gallery? Yes. He waited. Nessa stood. Fear made me check twice. She tucked the report into her notebook and headed toward the dining level. Glassline Hall was being changed behind Saren. The display crew removed the old disciplinary marker from the training wall. Tesk stood nearby while they worked. When the red ceramic tile came out of its case, he took it himself. He carried it to the new display. No ceremony. He placed it behind the glass and stepped back. The label beneath it read, Purpose Check Case 0. The next training cycle began that afternoon. A new group entered Glassline Hall. Their instructor brought up the first emergency sequence. Before anyone repeated it, a prompt appeared beneath the rule. What is this instruction protecting? The class bent over their notes. Nessa crossed the far end of the hall on her way to lunch, notebook under one arm. The specialist cadets saw her and went quiet. She kept walking. No one laughed when the instructor handed out the first sequence. Pens came down beside the printed rules. The red tile caught the hall light above the safety rules she ignored.